great speakers. So on the slide here, you see Ashley Miles. She, along with Funso Ajigbo, are leading the session today on leading effective virtual and hybrid meetings. And both of them together have a combined over 30 years of experience with General Mills. So Ashley, a learning and development manager, and then Funso, recently a manager in mergers and acquisitions here at General Mills. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves. Take it away, ladies. Thank you.
Oh, my name is Ashley. My name is Ashley Miles. We are going to be talking about I like to scuba dive. I like this. No, Juju, stop. Juju, come, Julian. 1 second, yeah. Julian, don't know. I'm in a meeting right now. Yeah, I'm in a meeting. Give me 2 seconds. 2 seconds, and then all right. We're talking about how we lead meetings, virtual meetings, like whether or not they're on a computer or not. And then do we have other people who are, well, Funksha, are you gonna do this next part? You want me to do this next part?
What part? Sure. I think we have some agendas. Hi, everyone. My name is Funsha. Can you guys hear me? Okay. And then we're going to do some introductions. We're going to talk about the virtual meeting. We're going to talk some more. And Ashley, can you see the slides?
Uh, what?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. I hear you. I hear
Okay.
you.
Can you finish the slide? I don't think we decided who was doing what, so I just need you to.
How many more? Is there another bullet point on this one? Maybe click through to see if there's another bullet point.
Yeah.
Okay, so we prepare. You could do this one, Funksha.
Yeah. So yeah,
Okay.
so this is how you run a virtual meeting. Make sure everyone attends and everyone is there. And the meeting will be the meeting.
And cut scene.
All right. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm sure everyone was like, what's going on here? These guys are crazy. My name is Funsha, and this is Ashley. We're going to be co-leading this together. But just to start off, I wanted to get everyone's initial reaction of what we just did when we're trying to do an introduction. And you can drop it in the chat, you can leave your comments, but what were your initial raw thoughts? Like, how did you feel? What did you see? What did it mean when we were trying to introduce or talk about why we're here today? And we need people to be engaged.
Be real. Like what thought went through your head? What were you messaging other people from the beginning of the start of the meeting with the music to right now? What were you thinking about as far as, this is how this is making me feel. This can't be real. This is
I was a little confused. I'm just reading some of the chat. Eric said, I have been in a meeting like this before. Excuse me. I love the GIF from Khadijah. And Gloria said, I was wondering what was happening, the background too. So Ashley, you can tell us,
ready to drop
Ashley,
off.
tell us where that background. And then I'm glad y'all ended it because the Dorcas was like, okay, yes, I am ready to drop off. I was getting ready to drop off. So, and then Adedoyan, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, says, am I in the right place? Latano shocked face. So those are some of the reactions.
awesome. Well, listen, I want you guys to hold on tight to how that made you feel because we're gonna wrap back to kind of what those feelings were and kind of how those things might impact people that are attending your virtual meetings and things that maybe you can do to help curb some of that and prepare a little bit better so that you're not turning people off right from the jump. So now we're actually going to do our real introductions. We can go to the next slide. As Carmen Dominique said, I was dropping off, but I wanted to show a little grace. We know y'all were probably in the side chat, like, what in the world? What are these girls doing? I'm Ashley Miles. I'm a learning and development manager at General Mills. I have been remote since 2015. So I guess I'm what you can call an OG remoter. I've done food safety and quality remote. And then most recently, about a year and a half ago, I transitioned into an HR role in learning and development. And I'm a part of a team that is hybrid. And so with that, I'll let my co-facilitator, Funso, also introduce herself as well.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Funso Ajigbo. I've been at General Mills for about 14 years. I've actually been hybrid since 2019 when I was supporting our international business based here in the US. And then over time, also supported virtual teams, so managed a virtual team based out of Latin America. And then now I work in M&A where we have a combination of in-person and virtual environment. So I definitely understand the pain that we sometimes feel when we run some of these virtual or hybrid meetings. And so today, what are we going to cover? So there are just 4 things we want to talk about. Like, why do you have a meeting? The why behind the meeting. What are you trying to achieve with either your virtual or your hybrid meeting? Because being really clear on what the purpose of that meeting is helps in preparation and execution of that meeting. And so that is some of the things that we're going to talk about today, is that clarity of, well, why do we have this meeting? Why is it important? What is the right framework or structure we should have? And then what is the right prep and execution that gets us ready for the meeting? And then we'll have some Q&As, but I encourage people to put questions in the chat and we will try to answer the questions as we go. This is meant to be very interactive. We also have Carmen in the chat, so she's going to make sure that everyone's question is getting answered. So please leave your questions, your tips as we go through this presentation. We want this to be as engaging as possible because we also all bring different insights as we think about all we've all navigated in the past 4 years.
Awesome. Yeah. And to Funcho's point, like this is going to be us learning together. We can share things that have worked and haven't worked for us, but like she said, we all bring different perspectives. So really this concept of social learning is going to be key for us, and people being engaged and being able to share what they know and things they've experienced are going to be key. So why are we having the meeting? Very first step, and this is crucial, and you'll hear this a lot throughout today. The very first thing you need to think about if a meeting is going to be effective or not is, what is the intended outcome of the meeting, right? So why are we having this meeting to begin with? What does success look like for this meeting? Once we kind of have that baseline, you need to think about who needs to be there at that meeting to be able to get that intended outcome based on the participants, what meeting type it should be. So is it a mix of virtual and in-person participants, which could be a hybrid meeting? Is it going to be fully virtual? Is it going to be fully in person? And then after you have that, look at setting that agenda. So in order to be able to meet that intended outcome for that meeting type for those participants, what does that agenda need to look like to make sure that that meeting is going to be super, super effective? All right, we can go to the next one. So a part of that is really just preparation. So not all meetings, and I'm a huge fan of this, not all meetings that are virtual or hybrid have to have PowerPoint slides. But if we choose to use PowerPoint slides, the #1 rule is to make sure we're keeping it clean, y'all. You guys saw that initial slide that we shared with Funso and I during our demo, where it was just super cluttered, hard to read, just a lot of stuff going on. What happens when we do stuff like that, and this is the L&D person in me coming out, is we max out people's cognitive load, right? People can only pay attention to a certain amount of things at one given time. So when we max out that cognitive load, people will zone out. But there are different tools like Canva or Slide Model or Prezi that can help us to create those really clean presentations. And Microsoft PowerPoint just added an accessibility tool where you can make a presentation and you can check it for accessibility to make sure that no matter who your audience is, they'll be able to actually read and access the slides.
Hey, Ashley, for that accessibility option, so is that transcript or is that something additional?
It's actually it's something you can click on. It's in the ribbon of your PowerPoint. And when you click on it, it'll check the accessibility. So it's looking for things like, is there really good contrast in the slides? So is the contrast high enough for people who might be colorblind? If you have pictures, are there descriptions of what the pictures are, people who might not necessarily be able to see, and they have to just be able to read. So it's just making sure that it's inclusive for everyone, so that no matter what, no matter kind of where they're coming from, they'll still be able to fully participate and engage.
Thanks.
All right, another big piece of prep that we have here is just making sure that the team is set up good. Y'all, the number one rule in this thing is never go it alone. So one of the things we talk about is making sure you have a team and you prep the team, because at the end of the day, we all know things happen, right? So make sure you identify somebody like Carmen, who's going to be in the chat, making sure she's reading the slides. Make sure you have a co-facilitator, or at least somebody that can back you up in case something happens, right? Make sure that people kind of know the role that they're going to play, so that whenever things happen and there's transitions that need to happen, everyone kind of knows who has what. All right. Kudo points for anybody in the chat who can tell us who this picture is. Does anybody recognize who might be in this picture? Famous director, movie director? Any guesses? What? Y'all know Spike Lee? Yeah. Okay, Jeanette. Good. Yeah. So Spike Lee. So yeah, whenever you're doing a virtual or hybrid meeting, it's really almost like a production, right? So you need to make sure that everyone kind of knows who has what and where folks are going, so that you can make sure that it's going to be successful and that you're going to meet your intended outcome. And that includes prepping both your team so that they know what to do, yourself so that you kind of know that you're going to meet your intended outcome, and then the participants, just to make sure that they understand what to expect when they come to the meeting. Do the right thing. I see you, Jeanette. Awesome. And some examples of kind of what that might look like in like real life is, it can be something as simple as just an Excel file where you kind of have a run of what you call a run of show, where you go over, here's kind of the agenda that's a little bit more in depth for people who are going to be a part of the team, who's doing what slides, what they're talking about. And then for the participants, something that's a little bit less in depth, but kind of at least lets them know what to expect when they come to the meeting. And then lastly, for the team during the meeting, just a small side group chat, right? The last thing you want to do is try to figure out in the meeting in front of everyone else, like if something's going on, you don't want to be, oh, Funksha, do you have this slide next? No, Eric, are we doing this next? Take that off to the slide so you guys can kind of have that communication outside of the larger group setting. And now we are going to watch a short video. So now you guys are already prepped. Keep your eyes, ears, and mind open, because we're going to kind of discuss this afterwards. I know the initial demo that you saw was unexpected, but now that you are expecting to see things, think about things that you see that are wrong, things that can be improved, and what thoughts come through your mind as you kind of see this video. And hopefully we'll have the sound shared as well on this one. We'll see. If not, we can just watch it with audio only.
How are you doing? Hey, is that Dara?
Yeah.
Guys,
Hey.
I can't hear anything.
Oh.
Hey, Dara, there's a kind of feedback thing in the back. Maybe you need to mute your phone. The light behind your head, we can't actually see you. Maybe you can adjust that. Marilee, hi, how you doing, Marilee? Hey, Josh, how you doing?
Good.
Did you know this meeting was happening right now? Hey,
Look, it's my dog.
it's great you've got that. But we're going to be trying to go through some slides.
Oh, okay.
We were supposed to be going, Josh, through the figures. Have you got the figures? That's better. That's way better, Andrew. Andrew, still a little bit kind of, still can't really see. You need to turn it so the light is on your face. That's better. That's better. Great. Great. Dara, I think we've lost you.
All right. So Before we go further, I just want to hear everyone's feedback of how did it make you feel? What did you think about the little short video in terms of if you show up to a meeting and that was going on? What were some of the things that you guys saw that was like, okay, like what's going on here? So someone says chaos. Yes, there was definitely a lot of chaos.
Yeah, chaotic.
Was chaotic, okay.
Yeah,
There was,
feel free to come off mute as well.
yeah, you can come off mute. I'm
Oh,
not sure.
yes. Oh, hi, this is Sebai. And hello. And I was thinking like chaotic, and it was just very confusing because everyone was everywhere. Like he was like,
Yeah.
I think he was like suggesting someone to go more in the light, and just like a lot of, it felt like he was trying to set the scene before the actual meeting started taking place.
Yes. Yeah, no, that's a good one. Thanks. Yeah. And then someone, Dominique commented, spending more time organizing than actually going through the content. It was obvious from the guy, everyone wasn't even clear why they're there, right? The guy was like, well, we're here to, before people get into the meeting, it has to be really clear, like, why am I here? What am I here to contribute? Is it a decision? Is it an inform? Could it have been an email if it was just an inform versus an actual meeting? So this goes back to the comment Ashley made in the beginning. The intent of a meeting is very clear. It should be very clear. It really does set you up for success when I'm really clear of what am I trying to get out of this meeting? Because that is what determines if a meeting is effective or not. And so just in terms of how do you even prepare? So one, you're really clear on the objectives, you're clear on the agenda, you're clear on the attendees. So then how do you prep for the meeting? So the first thing we have to think about is lighting. You know, I know some people turn off their camera, some people turn on their camera. It all depends on the organization, on your organization. But if you're going to turn on the camera, make sure you have good lighting. Like people can actually see your face and your expression because that is why you're turning on the camera. Make sure that your background is not cluttered because that would distract people. So for example, even if you're in an office, how can you make sure that your background is tinted in a way that people can't see people passing behind you, right? And then also, how do you eliminate any sound distraction so that people are not like turning right or left or wondering, is that coming from my mic or not? I think tech preparation really helps in terms of making sure that that meeting goes smoothly and you spend more time actually executing the meeting than planning or trying to set up the meeting. So I'm going to pause. Is there's some questions in the chat, Carmen?
Yeah, so there's one question around cameras. Is there a business case for having cameras on? And I do have some more camera questions as well, which I know we want to talk about. So the business case for having cameras on, is there one? What's your perspective?
I'll pass that on to Ashley first and then I'll.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think this one is it's really, it goes back to kind of the theme of our call, right? What is the intended outcome of that meeting? So if you're having a meeting that, let's say, is a virtual happy hour, and the goal of that meeting is to have new people connect because they haven't met each other before, you're trying to build that psychological safety. I would say for that intended purpose, then having cameras on actually does add business. It adds value, right? If there's a meeting where everyone knows each other, you're just pulling the team together just to share information, and there's really no reactions that are needed or anything like that, then that might have a different, then having cameras on might have a different business value. So it's both the business value and then, to Funcho's point, like what that company culture is that kind of determines, does it make sense to have cameras on or not? I don't think there's a one size fit all answer, but I'd love to hear, Funcho, your perspective, and I guess others on the call if you want to chime in as well.
Yeah, I agree with you. So I've been in virtual roles where no one turned on their cameras, and that was also driven by just difference in time zone, right? Like nobody wanted to see me at 2 a.m. in the morning, and I don't think I wanted to see anybody. And so in that situation, it was clear that everybody will have their camera off just because that was how we operated. But then I'm also on a new team where we tend to turn on our cameras a lot. And so I think it's understanding also, as Ashley said, what is the corporate culture? If it's a one-on-one meeting and someone is not turning on their camera, it's always good to ask, like, why, right? So, what is going on when someone doesn't turn on their camera? Are they not just feeling too well? Or is it more like, they don't want to have that face-to-face interaction? So I know there's always a debate about should I or should I not? And sometimes it's not really about turning on or off the camera. It's about, are we able to drive our intended outcome even without the camera on and off? Or are we worried that people are or are not engaged? And so if they're not engaged, then should they be in the meeting in the first place, right? And so when you start to peel the layer, it's less about an action and more about what is going on behind that action. Yeah.
Thanks for that. In the chat, Alicia did talk about her team and having clear expectations. She says that we're almost always hybrid too, and it trains the team to know how to present, take notes, and keep time and deal with tech issues. We are always cameras on. It's a good starting point for their team. So, and she put a blog post in the chat. Real quick, Eric Alexander also put the survey for this in the chat. So folks, click on the survey, put it off to the side, and we'll do that after the session, please. I do have some additional questions on cameras, and maybe you answered these as well. The first one, how do you get folks to turn on their cameras willingly? And how do we get folks how do we have people rely on their attendance or be engaged when they're attending? And that might go to your point, Funsha, around if they're not engaged, should they actually be a part of the meeting? And then the other one was really around just how to ensure everyone on a virtual meeting turns on their camera. So I think you both touched on this with the culture of the company or meeting, excuse me, and then the type of relationship you have with your team there.
Yeah. And then just one other thing I would add is, even when you have a fully in-person meeting, everyone is not engaged, right? If you have a department meeting of 50 people, trust me, some people will be on Amazon shopping. And so I think sometimes also it's making sure that we're having a fair yardstick of what does engagement mean in this meeting, right? If it's a decision meeting, well, I want everybody to be engaged because they're decision makers. If it's an informed meeting, what is the right level of engagement that I need to drive in this meeting for it to be successful? I've had meetings in the past where managers will reach out to people before the meeting and say, hey, can you plan to ask 2 or 3 questions during the meeting, right? That is a way to sow the seed for engagement. And it's also like, can you put some things in the chat so that people can feel engaged and people can feel, so there are ways that you can, and I think I'm going to the next slide already, but there are ways how you can drive engagement, but it also all depends on your company culture, right? Because each company has a very different culture. If somebody asks a question once and you shut them down, well, would anybody ever ask a question during the meeting, right? So what are some of the things that you've also set in place that is driving low engagement in your chat? And I see some comments in the chat. So roles equals engagement. Yeah, really, really helps. And camera on is an expectation if you were in person. Yeah.
Eric also has his hand up.
Yes, Eric.
Hello, just a question, and you guys might have mentioned it, but part of it, when I've seen it, is using cameras to create a sense of community. So like everyone feels like they're in the same space and they're engaged, particularly around COVID, where there's a push for, even though you're on the other side of the world or the country, or you isolated in a, sequestered in your office or your home by yourself, creates a sense of community and engagement, and you're able to see, and it makes the discussion more rich because you're able to see facial expressions and nonverbal cues. And so there's another level of kind of richness of content and engagement that might also be a business case for cameras.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I think sometimes leaders also set that expectation. So as I mentioned, in my group, it's always cameras on, right? But that expectation was set from the very beginning by the leader of always cameras on. So you show up to any meeting, the first person there, the camera is on. And so it's not a conversation that you kind of have to have down the line. And so sometimes with cameras, I think it starts from what expectations have you set with a team, and are you trying to reset a new expectation that wasn't clear from the beginning? Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, and I can add too, like some of the conversations, because I've heard both sides of kind of like that cameras on or cameras off, right? The things I've heard for cameras on really are just around it creates that engagement and creates that just that connectiveness. You can read nonverbal cues. But then I've heard people who aren't necessarily as comfortable turning their cameras on. And I think that some of the things they've shared are just as valid as well, in terms of like maybe they don't feel like they're psychologically safe, or maybe having different people's videos moving while they're trying to concentrate is very hard for them. So it actually distracts them more when everyone has their camera on, so they're not able to actually focus on content. So I think one of the things that we kind of have come to here is just the fact that there's like this discussion that happens, right? There's not a one size fit all solution, but it's something to think about. It's something to think about and to really go deeper to understand the why behind people want to have their cameras on or not, and why you want people to have them on or not too.
And I'm going to ask a question for the chat for people that, well, we're in the meeting today, right? And we have 3 people with cameras on and some people with cameras off. And so I'm curious as to like, why do people have their cameras off right now? And I'm not saying you should turn it on. I'm just curious.
This is Carmen. I'll just answer real quick. Because I'm monitoring the chat here and just behind the scenes kind of production, I don't want people to be distracted by what I'm doing. So that's why I have my camera off for now.
Okay, that's helpful.
Hey guys, I was gonna share as well. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Awesome presentation so far. I love this info. So I have my camera off because I think I read the room first, and if others do, it kind of makes you the oddball. So that's one. Two, I'm active listening, but I'm also multitasking with like sharing some of this information with my team and, like ideating in my head on like how this is applicable and like actually trying to apply it. So which I mean, I have like 5 screens, so I would look crazy like while I'm sharing my screen. But, if everyone else was at active listen and then, just take subtle notes somewhere. So yeah.
Thank you, Jeanette. That's helpful. That's good. All right. So Cecilia personally doesn't put it on in large group presentation. I'm focused on the presentation, not the people. But if I'm actively participating or engaging in conversation, I typically have it on. And so I think it goes back to what is the intent of the meeting, right? As Ashley has mentioned in the beginning with some of these examples of what is the intent, and does camera on or off helps drive that intent, right? If you're trying to bond as a team, is camera on really important for that psychological safety? If it's more of a bigger presentation and people are just more listening versus participating, does that change the intent? So there is no right or wrong answer. It's how do we navigate this to make sure that we drive the purpose of the meeting? So yeah. All right. So we've kind of talked a little bit about this in terms of how do you drive engagement. So now that you've prepped for the meeting, you're really clear on your goals, you're really clear in terms of what you want to achieve, you've done all the planning, you have the superb team, the dream team, to help you execute your meeting. So then how do you then execute the meeting? And so set a foundation for engagement, right? It's really hard sometimes when you have meetings back to back to drive engagement. And so here are some strategies of how do you drive engagement in the meeting. And as you can see in our chat, from the beginning, right? It's like, what can you hear? What can you see? It really prompts people to be engaged in the conversation. It's less of talking at people, but getting their perspective. And so how do you set a foundation for engagement in your meeting? How do you get people to feel like they are participating in the meeting? Like, how do you encourage the use of chats and reactions and some other tools to make sure that people feel engaged? How do you ask questions that draws people out of like just being passive to being an active participant in the meeting? So I'm curious for other people, what are some of the other engagement tools and strategies you've leveraged when you were driving your meeting? I'm waiting. Ask questions, yes. Quizzes, prizes, giveaways, yes. That's a good one, Eric.
Giveaways are always key.
And yes, I'm about a giveaway. Ask questions, yes. Not free 99. And then some of the other things that I've added is, you can have a poll during the meeting and get people to react to the poll. I know some people have done like Kahoots at the beginning of the meeting where the leader always asks, like, how are you feeling today? Right? And that's a way to start out the meeting, engaging the team of like, how is everybody feeling? And that makes people kind of react, right? Have a word cloud. So there's a lot of tech that you can also use to kind of drive that engagement and that conversation in your meeting. And then, Latano says, ask questions, ask for a different perspective. Just examples of what we've seen today, right? We talked about cameras on, cameras off. What are people's perspectives? Why do they have their cameras off? A lot of that is all about driving engagement, right? So that everybody believes that we're all here together to learn. And so how do we get that back and forth of information between each other? So as a realist, with all the planning you do, things can still go wrong, right? So you can have tech issues, poor internet connections, AV issues, like with everything you do, something can still go wrong. And so that is where preparation comes in, right? When you prepare for your presentation or your meeting, you're less likely to be like unnerved by when some tech issues happen. And part of your preparation can actually position you for readiness when it comes to when you have tech issues. So for example, for this discussion today, I have slides, Eric has slides, like multiple people have slides. And in case, my Wi-Fi goes down, somebody else can start presenting. And so this is how you can leverage your team to make sure that you can overcome some of the issues that might come up. Another example is, how do, joining the call early, testing out if things are going to work. Maybe you might need to turn off your Wi-Fi or turn off all the devices so that you can have good Wi-Fi during your meeting to be able to fully connect. And so really, tech issues happens. It's a story of life. I've joined a lot of meetings and I'm like, can you hear me? Can you hear me? But that preparation really helps you navigate it better. So that you're better able to just jump into plan B with your team once tech issues arises. Yep, and so Karen mentioned it never fails that my computer always restarts at the beginning of a meeting. It's like clockwork. It's like, oh, there is a meeting, we need to restart. So I'm gonna pause. Any questions, comments, thoughts from the team so far? Not an 8 a.m. meeting, yes.
One question, do you have any tips on running a meeting with a variety of variety of participants? So we talked about virtual and in-person, but if you have like international versus like you mentioned that earlier, Funsha, and Ashley, you have a remote team as well. So different time zones or what have you. Any insight there?
Yeah, I can take this one
Mhm.
initially. And if anyone else on the call also has experience, like feel free to shoot it in the chat and make sure you're sharing that as well. But I would say, for different time zones, a big thing that we've seen when I was working with a global team is just making sure that we are accommodating folks' time zones throughout, right? So every meeting is not going to be during US Eastern Standard Time. So we'll make sure that we're kind of rotating those meetings so that we get engagement from folks that are on different time zones other than just the US. The other thing I would say when it comes to hybrid meetings, right, is just making sure that you are using some of that tech that's available. So on the last slide, I think Funksha showed Slido, and that's a tool that you can use to make sure that in-person and virtual people can submit questions. So that no matter if somebody's in person or they're virtual, everyone's kind of on that same level playing field to be able to voice their questions and have them heard. So those are just a couple of things you can do. But Funksha, anything you would add or anybody else on the call?
Yeah. No, definitely. Especially when you're working with multiple different cultures. Also that cultural awareness, right? It's going back to, well, if our intended outcome is engagement, what does engagement look like if you're from Latin America versus if you're from Europe? Because that you would need to tailor your meeting very differently depending on the cultural context of the people that are attending your meeting. And one thing Ashley also kind of alluded to is how do you bring a level playing field between those people that are online and in person? I've had meetings where everybody joins the meeting, even if you're in person. And so that way, everyone has like one way to interact, one place to ask questions. Or sometimes you start out by having the people online answer questions before the people in person, right? So that leaves room for the online attendees to be engaged and be able to ask all their questions first before like in-room conversations happen. So those are some of the techniques that we've leveraged to balance those kind of meetings. Yeah. All right.
Awesome. So we are going to look, I know we have 16 participants on the call. So when we say these next couple of things, we don't want to see a whole bunch of people drop off. We're going to take the next 5 minutes to actually put some of these things into like practice, right? So we're going to break you guys into 2 breakout groups. One group is going to look at a hybrid case study. The second group is going to look at a virtual case study. We want you to look at these 2 things and then also figure out based off of these intended outcomes and set agendas that are there, you know, what prep might need to happen for that meeting to take place. What are some ways that you might engage folks in that your particular meeting? And then thirdly, what are some other considerations that you might have for the particular agenda that you have? So Eric, if you could go ahead and split the group out into 2 breakouts and then drop the slide into the chat so that folks have availability to it. We're actually going to go for 5 minutes. So it's 1:50 Eastern time. So at 1:55 Eastern time, we'll come back and we'll have a quick discussion before we wrap up.
You're on mute, Eric.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, I tried to take a screenshot and drop it in the chat, but that's not working. I would ask attendees to take a screenshot on their own of the instructions because I'm not able to drop in the chat. But I will open up the breakout groups. There are 2 breakout groups, and it's auto select. If you're in the room that you don't want, you can self-select to the other one, but the system should automatically move you to a room. And I'll do that now.
Eric,
Thanks.
you should be able to share the slide into the breakouts.
Awesome. We'll have 5 quick minutes.
Okay, breakout rooms are open now.
So Eric, I have a screenshot of the slides, but for some reason I could not.
Yeah, for some reason the screen capture isn't going into the chat.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
what you could do, I don't know if you have it, maybe you can upload a document to the chat. Let's see.
I think there are other documents, like it's like 52 slides. So
Well, I think most people probably took a screenshot, hopefully,
okay.
or we could share.
Okay, so I'll do this. I'll take a screenshot, save it as a document, and then upload the document.
Okay.
What time do you want to end the breakouts?
I think we said 1:55, so it's been 2 minutes so far. Yeah, so maybe 3 more minutes. And I broadcast to the chat saying we'd let them know when there was 60 seconds left. So I'll throw a message into the to all the participants when there's 60 seconds left.
Yeah, when I close it, there's a 60-second timer. And so that would be the
Oh,
trigger.
okay.
Just to get that announcement. Yeah, it looks like it's only pulling in documents from Dropbox, OneDrive.
Wish we had a bit more time for the breakout room, but it's all good. We got into some good discussion around cameras. I think it's always fun.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll close them and then I'll give them a minute to rejoin.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
So we have 6 minutes left. Is that enough time?
Yeah, we'll just do a quick, I'll do a top two for have each of them probably do the top two things and then turn it back over to Carmen to kind of wrap us up.
Great. Are you guys holding up?
Good.
Good, good. I know I feel like it's been forever, Eric, since I've actually like seen you. Been gone.
Oh yeah, yeah. We have TC Band events twice a year. You're welcome to join us. I'll fly in person.
You're flying in person. I love it. I love it. I love it.
Where are you located? You're in is it Florida?
No, North Carolina still.
North Carolina. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Close.
Close, yeah. For sure.
So we need some voting support from your area, I think.
Listen, exactly. All right. People are coming back in. So I think we almost have everyone, and we only have 5 minutes left. So we are going to, let's do this. For both the hybrid and the virtual case study, we'll start with the hybrid case. Let's just get the top two things that you guys want to call out about what stood out to you or what you guys think would be great to share about what you learned or decided to do for that hybrid case study. So anybody in the hybrid case study want to kind of come off mute or throw it in the chat? Top two, let's go. So we had, look, I'm looking at the hybrid case study people.
I can share real quick. We had some tech issues, so it took us a little bit to get going.
Oh, no worries.
So that was one of the learnings, like making sure all your tech is prepped and all of those things. And then I was hearing a couple of things, like a couple of things we do on my team is one, either set out decks ahead of time, so people have a time to like look at it, read it, and they can come prepared to discuss and not spend time in the meeting reading a slide. And then being clear on the intent of the meeting, like, is it an inform? Is it a decision? Is it just a discuss? Like, what role do I need people to play in that moment?
Awesome. Awesome stuff. Good sharings. All right. And then for the team virtual, what were you all's top two aha moments or things you want to share out?
Yes, I put one in the chat around you can always give me with a DoorDash gift card. So but really having that so people can connect around food, because this virtual case study, a team was being introduced to a new leader. So it was more about introductions and having great icebreakers. Thanks, Keith, for putting that in there. You know, talking about like, hey, what's your favorite Halloween costume? Since that is coming up. So.
Awesome. No, I think those are two really good ones, you know, good motivators for people to be able to engage, and also, like you said, free stuff. And I think Keith just put something in the chat about icebreakers as well. So that's another good one. All right. So to respect folks' time, I know we only have 3 minutes left. We're actually going to, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them into the chat, and then Funksha and I can get back to you on them. But I want to make sure that we give folks enough time to be able to get to their next engagement that they probably committed to. So with that, thank you all for your time. This has been great and awesome. I think we've learned a lot, and I think some of the discussion has been really rich. But I'm going to turn it back over to Carmen to kind of do our exit and our outro.
Absolutely. Again, thank you, Ashley. Thank you, Funcha, for giving us your expertise and your over 30 years of experience with this topic. For folks, please join us for our next session. This is going to be session 3 on leveraging AI for career advancement. You can continue to register for this session, and that'll be next week with our guest speaker there, Ozuma Isje. All right, and then please connect with TC Band as well. And the next slide, we have multiple ways for you to connect with us. You can connect with us on Instagram,